Hi there. I'm Leilani Sayas, a certified life coach with natural capacities. I specialize in brain wellness, so I help people work with their brains instead of against them so that they are clear, strong, and ready to master how they live. With 20 plus years of experience as a university researcher who studied cognitive functioning, I've put together this quick video to help you better understand your brain, especially when it comes to forgetting and remembering names. So, does this happen to you? You've just met someone and then can't remember their name 5 minutes later or the next day, and you wonder, what was their name again? Although frustrating and potentially embarrassing, know that this is a common memory slip. In a bit, I'm going to explain what's happening and share a helpful strategy to deal with it better. But first, I'll describe three basic principles about how memory works so that this puzzle makes more sense. First, our long-term memory neural networks are like paths of string lights, with each neuron light able to send and receive signals, a process known as neuron firing. Brightly lit neural pathways essentially contain strong bulbs that fire to help us efficiently think, feel, sense, and do throughout our nervous system. Second, our brains use the most efficient of these pathways to mentally find and retrieve information because recall is very complicated. For example, our brains might search through millions of neural connections just to find what we want to remember. It's a potentially tangled mess. So our brains search using the best lit pathways first and avoiding slower, dim pathways because they might cause irrelevant or even wrong information to be remembered. Recall is a competitive process, so brains prefer efficiency and accuracy, ideally using the strongest and best connected neurons. And third, the more we access a neural pathway, the brighter and faster its use becomes. It's as if the light bulbs strengthen instead of wear out with use. In general, we tend to forget names because there are arbitrary labels that can change. For example, a shirt can also be called a blouse, top, or tee. Your friend Rob might also go by Robert, Robbie, Robin, or Bob. That makes names inherently harder to remember than other kinds of information that we keep. But there are also two important functional reasons why we tend to forget new names. The first reason involves attention, which shapes how names get into our brains in the first place. How focused we are when learning a name matters. Any competing demands that divert our attention away from the moment increases the odds that the name will fade before it even becomes something to remember. For example, it can be especially hard to learn a name at a party because so much is going on and being processed. The more split our attention is, the less vibrant the information will be going into our brains. Researchers estimate that it takes about an hour for a memory to consolidate into long-term memory. So names don't get immediately stored once we encounter them. It takes time for them to be integrated with what we already know. And strong integration requires vibrant attention. Now, the second reason involves what it takes to retrieve a name from long-term memory. Information must be easy to find and get out of the brain. If the name is part of a dimly lit neural pathway, it'll get bypassed in that competitive memory search, making its retrieval slower. By the way, if you remember a name hours later, that doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong with your cognitive functioning. Imagine how overwhelming it would be if all names looked like equally lit bulbs. Our brains wouldn't be able to distinguish between them very well, and retrieval would be much, much slower. So, although the problem of forgetting new names seems like one thing, there are actually three reasons why it can happen. 1. Names are especially hard to retrieve, so give yourself some grace if you forget. 2. Sometimes attention causes name information to fade before it can be properly stored for recall. And 3. The competitive memory search may cause the name to get overlooked. So let's apply this to real life. Imagine you've just met Chris. If you forget Chris's name right after being introduced, the problem is likely due to your attention and focus. If you forget Chris's name hours or days later, the problem is likely due to long-term memory retrieval, which can also be impacted by attention fading. I distinguish between these two problems because, although related, their remedies are different. Okay, now that you understand the problems, here's a strategy to help with remembering new names in the future. You must put intentional brain power behind learning a new name. Focus your attention on the name. Ask about the spelling if it's uncommon. And be genuinely curious about the person. Our brains thrive on what we find interesting. So to help focus your attention, discover something special about this person. Maybe it's about their hair color, or clothing, behavior, or something they said. Choose a detail that matters to you. You might say to yourself, this is dark-haired Chris, or Chris from Canada, or Chris who dances the tango. Do this in a way that fits with what you care about, how your brain best works. For example, labeling new Chris as Chris from Canada won't be very helpful if Canada doesn't mean much to you, because in your brain, it's likely a dim pathway. And the last step is to repeat the name and this special detail multiple times to replay and strengthen the information's vibrance so that it supports long-term memory consolidation. And when all else fails, don't be afraid to ask the person to remind you of their name. Your request shows that they are worth remembering. Okay, that's it. I hope you found this information useful. Subscribe to this Natural Capacities channel for future brain wellness videos. Thank you.